Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliet Clark, and I'm solo today, but I have a very important topic I want to talk to you guys about. So super excited. Before we get going, remember to go over to Breakthrough Author Magazine and get your free copy. You can find that at www.breakthroughauthormagazine.com. And if you're someone who really likes video, go over and subscribe to us on YouTube. You can find that at Super Brand Publishing. And we've got a lot of trainings coming up that are going to be over there as well. So it might be an actual bonus for you going over and taking a look around on YouTube. So today we're going to talk about something that came up at Medium Magic, the event that I was the keynote at with Shannon Proceeds. And one of the things that we talked about, not in great depth, but I want to get into a little more depth today, were the contracts that we're seeing out there. If you're uncomfortable with a contract that a publisher gives you, before you sign it, we welcome you to have an attorney look over it, or we're happy to look over it as well and sort of tell you where the money traps are at in there, and if this is really an author-centric contract, because that's a lot of what we're seeing is that when you're paying, when you're self-publishing, the contract should be all about you and the services that those people, that company that you've chosen are providing. It shouldn't be about how they're going to profit on the back end. So let's jump right in here with this. Number one, I'm going to go over 5 basics, but I'm also going to kind of give you some sample contracts we've seen lately and what you're looking for. So the first thing to know, number one, is never, ever give up your rights. Never, ever on a self-published product, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because that intellectual property is yours. And if you're using that book as a nurture tool for your products and services, it's important that that intellectual property belongs to you. So never, ever, ever give up those rights. That means that copyright needs to be filed in your name and that the contract says that you own full 100% rights and that you can do with those rights what you wish. We just saw a contract that we were a little bit shocked by recently. Somebody who did a bestseller campaign with us actually had a huge Asian audience. And when she went back and inquired about what was going on, why this wasn't reaching this Asian audience who was telling her that they actually purchased more on Google+, she brought us the contract because she didn't like the answer she got. So we looked over the contract, and a self-publishing company had taken the rights to her book. That should have never, ever happened. And further on that, as she went back and started asking questions, she found out that she was with an Amazon white label. And what that meant was that she was only published on Amazon. Amazon didn't cover the market in Malaysia that she was big in. And they told her that she had a 1-year exclusive with them. So she could only be on Amazon. Of course, if you know anything about Amazon, they were doing that because they were giving her book away for free through the free KDP programs and coming back and saying, hey, you know, we consistently get you to #1 at least once a quarter. Well, that's great, except for you don't get paid for those books. So it was really, really a mess. She had to go back and ask for those rights back, which after much back and forth, she finally did get them back. But here was the key thing they said in that conversation. They said, you know what, if you sell 50,000 books, then we can get you into bookstores and airports and bigger programs. The problem I saw with that was that if you can sell 50,000 books on your own, you don't need somebody to do that for you. So that's number one. Number two is never allow restrictions on those rights. So what does that mean? I mean, you're probably like, Juliet, you just said, like, don't allow them to have your rights. Well, we've seen contracts from bigger companies lately that say that you own the rights, but you can't move that book for 5 years. So that's pretty key because you own your rights, but you're giving them the rights to that book, to have that book published under them for 5 years. There's no reason you'd want to do that. And let me tell you why. This particular company, if you wanted an audiobook, you wouldn't want to go through them. They're very expensive compared to the other companies out there. So you want to be able to take that book someplace else to have it published. Here's the other thing we just saw in a contract. We actually saw somebody charged for an Audible upload. Now, let me explain how that contract works. She paid $600 for her to go out and have that audiobook produced. And then she was supposed to bring it back and they would upload it. Let me translate what that really looks like for you. Most companies who create audiobooks, who produce audiobooks, part of their service is to upload those books. We really love Twin Flame Studios because they're like us. They don't take any of the profits from the author. So we recommend people go there. What this contract was asking for is that you go hire someone and then bring them back to upload. Now, what are the ramifications of that? The contract had royalties based at 65% of net. So they were asking you to go get your book produced, bring it back to them so they could make royalties on your book. Completely insane. So, you know, those are the kinds of things you need to look at. And just as part of this, I'm not even going to make this number 3. There should be no part of a self-publishing contract where the publisher gets a piece of your profits. This is simple. This is so simple. And this is what's wrong with the self-publishing world is, let's say that I go to Office Depot and I say, hey, Office Depot, I'd like a business card design. And they say, okay, we can do that. It'll be $75. So great. They design the card. I pay $75. Now let me relate that back to publishing. In the publishing, when you're self-publishing, that's the equivalent of, yes, we'd be happy to set up your cover design. We'd be happy to format the book for you. And this is what it costs. And usually it's merged into a bigger package. So you can kind of see the parallel there of what's going on. Now, let's say that in the Office Depot description that, okay, it's designed. Now I need them printed. So I go ahead and I have Office Depot print me 100 cards. And then they come back and they hand me the box and they say, oh, Juliet, by the way, every time you hand out one of these cards, we get 35% of the business. Do you see where I'm going with this? When they take piece of your royalties on the back end for producing your book, that's what most companies are doing. They'll call it industry standard. They will say, hey, we get 50%. Don't go with the company that does that. And the reason is you have paid them to produce this book. You have paid them to upload this book. You have paid them to publish it. Why should they get a piece of your profits? So I probably should have made that a number in and of itself. But when you equate it back to what the Office Depot example that I gave you, you would never say, oh yeah, I'd love to give you 35% of everything I make by handing out a business card. Same with publishing. There's no reason. You did all the work and you paid them to do the rest of the work. So, third point, always understand distribution. So where is my book going to be at? Within our company, we have 3 different levels of distribution. So you can do a basic program where it's Barnes & Noble softcover, Amazon softcover, and Amazon Kindle. So understanding that, you're not expecting to see your book everywhere. Now, there's a higher level that encompasses Google Plus and Apple and all of those other distributions, libraries and institutional places as well. I'm going to go back to the first example. My person who we did the bestseller campaign had no idea that she was Amazon exclusive. And if you had looked at her contract, there was nothing in there. When she went back to them to solve the problem with Malaysia, I said, have them go over to this. I can see on their website they have it. but they only had it for that bigger group. I said, fine, you should be able to purchase it. Go back and say, hey, I'd like to purchase this service so that I can get over into Malaysia. They wouldn't do it. So understand before you jump into this where distribution is, and understand not only where it is, but what the percentages are, because there's a little bit different percentage that the distributor takes, and that the distributor fees usually run 55 to 65%. And that's for Amazon's piece, that's for Barnes and Noble's piece, Apple's piece. So understand that before you go in, because people don't, and then they're shocked when they're only making $1 or $2 on each book, not understanding that a huge chunk of that just went out to the distributors. Has nothing to do with the publisher, it's all the distributor. So number 4, understand exactly what you are purchasing and how it's going to be delivered. We just saw a contract that said basically, you paid us to produce your book, but you don't actually own the files. So imagine that. I come to you and I pay you to design that cover. I pay you to design and format. I pay you for that ebook. I pay you for everything. And then you say, hey, by the way, you own the rights, but you don't own that piece of the work that we actually just designed for you. So there are things in the contract that you need to understand exactly what you're purchasing. We saw another contract recently where $900 for a book return policy. That's something that is purchased when your book is in bookstores. So if you're self-publishing, chances are your book is not going to be in bookstores. So understand what you're paying for there. I will tell you, this woman, I felt very badly for her. She paid for $1,500 on her contract of items that will never, ever be deliverable. They were pure gravy profit. And these people, this company knew going in that these things would never, ever be deliverable. So understand, go through every line item and ask questions about it. And find out what the right questions are about it. Because a lot of times we don't understand that publishing has its own language. So what you think you're getting is not always what you're getting. I sort of equate this to if an engineer came to me with a book and said, hey, will you build this bridge for me? And I would look at it and go, yeah, those are plans, but I don't get the math and I don't get it. So you can kind of see, if you don't understand the language, you're not going to thrive in the industry. So be sure you understand that going in. Number 5 is understanding royalties. And understanding royalties is crucial because different platforms have different percentages. So I'm going to give you an example here. If you publish on Kindle, it's a 70-30 split. 70 is the split for the author. 30% is the split for Amazon. That's their distribution fee. Now there is, because Jeff Bezos needs to keep going in space, a little download fee now, which I highly object to, but it's not my call. And it's depending on how large your file is. So I can't even tell you at any given moment how large that fee is going to be. But understand that. So when you go to a self-publisher, and the self-publisher says, oh, you get 50% of this, they have just taken 20% of your royalties for putting up your Kindle. And the other 30% is going to Jeff Bezos. So understand those splits so you can say, hey, this is self-publishing. Why are you getting a piece of it? And while we're at it, understand the Kindle dashboard. You should not only own your Authorcentric dashboard, but you should own your Kindle dashboard. And here's why. And we do this all the time. You should own it because, number 1, that ensures that the seller or that the publisher is not getting a piece of your profits. And number 2, you can run your ads from there. And if you don't own that dashboard, you can't run ads for your own book. So it's definitely something that you should own. Here's the other thing that we see with a lot of speakers is they'll go out on the road. They know they'll be in town for an event. So because they have control of that dashboard, they'll lower the price of their book for an event. So literally it'll be go over and buy this book for the next 3 days while I'm here. And it's $5.99 instead of $9.99. So they have complete control over everything they're doing. And that's what self-publishing was supposed to do, was give you control. Also, understanding the percentages over if they're using Ingram or CoreSource. Ingram softcover has a little bit different distribution fee than, let's say, CoreSource does with the ebooks. So understanding thoroughly what your cut is and what's going to happen with this is crucial, and you should understand it up front. And don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid of challenging the standard answer that you're going to get a lot, which is, this is the industry standard. You don't need to go with a company that's the industry standard. You can get great service and own your product and understand your royalty cut on it. What are some other things? I'm not going to get deep and like give you some more bullet points, but other things. Ask lots of questions about, will you talk to me about categories and keywords? Will you help me with that? Or will you dump me into general categories where I'll never be seen? Make sure that you're conversing with these people, this publishing company, about where your categories. We have someone who moved over last month, a company that I won't name, but it's big. Put them in these big categories where no one would ever find his book. His book actually is a lot about diversity and equity in the financial industry, as well as some African history and African religion. So we did a deep dive before he even hired me and said, these are the available categories. And by the way, did you know you can ask Amazon to set up categories? So we produced a letter his first week into our project to Amazon saying, hey, Amazon, it looks like your diversity and equity categories are a bit light. May we suggest these? And the answer we got back was, yes, when you go to publish your book, contact us again and we will review and add these if it's appropriate. So understand what you're getting into and where that book is. And can those people get you to a bestseller list with those books? We are really excited about being on the forefront of adding these categories that have never been there before for diversity and equity and African communities. Let's see what else I can tell you. Understanding the multi-platforms. So that goes back to the royalties a little bit, but understand what platforms are you going to be on. Will you be softcover on Barnes & Noble? Will you be softcover Amazon? Where will your ebooks be published? Will you have ebooks? A lot of millennials are in other countries are no longer using Amazon. They're not Amazon friendly places. Let me give you an example. We have two authors who, one of them's big in Sweden. The other one just picked up Swedish clients because her ebook was available on Storytel in Sweden. A lot of times Swedes go to Storytel instead of Amazon because it's Amazon EU. It's not directly in Sweden. So really understand the multi-platform experience. You know, are you doing an ebook? If you have a business book, should definitely be on Audible, because that's the way a lot of busy business people consume their books, is they will go out and they will purchase an Audible book. And then if they think it's a reference source, then they'll go buy the soft cover or the hard cover to keep around the office for reference on there. So, you know, do you need that audiobook? Do you need a multi-platform experience, which might be Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and those ebooks that go into different countries, as well as Apple and Google? The problem with the Malaysia contract was that most of those people there were telling our client that they were using Google Books instead of Amazon. So really be aware of the demographics of your audience and where they are consuming books as well. So I hope that was super helpful. I know it's a lot to digest, but there really are contractual questions that you should be asking. Again, I offer our services. We don't legally advise you because I'm not an attorney, but we will tell you where the money capture is in those contracts that shouldn't be. And I do highly, highly recommend that you have an attorney look over your contract to make sure that everything's in order. We've had a couple entertainment attorneys look over ours, and if it makes sense, we're happy to make changes. I will tell you, one of our clients, Linda, whose book is coming out in September, she had an entertainment attorney, and he came back and said, hey, Juliet, could we make this a little more client friendly? And he changed a couple lines for us, and we were happy to do it. It didn't make any difference in the profit margins, and it didn't make it really any difference in what we were doing. It was just a little bit of language revision. So don't be afraid to do that. Just one more example. This is why you shouldn't be afraid to do it. Back in 2020, we had a client who was originally a client of ours who was thinking, she was a marketing client for her business. She came to us with a publishing contract, and the publishing contract actually said in it that the publisher got 30% of every one of her online programs. So if she sold programs, and I said to her, how much do you make a year in programs? And she said, about 250,000. I'm like, do you want to give these people 80,000? So I sent her back. That was the money piece of that contract. I sent her back to talk to that publishing company. And their response was, well, you're not our ideal client if you won't give us that. And her response was, see ya. And she came and published with us. So be aware of those little things in there that they're not really working for, that they're taking. So questions, you guys are welcome to reach out to me at chatwithjuliet.com, schedule something on my calendar. Or if you don't want to schedule time, which I completely understand, always you can go over to superbrandpublishing@gmail.com and shoot us off a note, ask us if we'll look over something, and we're always happy to help. So have a great day. I hope this was helpful.